Well, let's start on time and maybe end early. And I know everybody's tired from a long day, so we'll make you just a little bit more tired. No, I wouldn't do that to you. All right, so who am I? See those letters behind my name? They really don't mean anything but that I studied and kind of did Scrum a lot and project management. So the first one is Certified Scrum Master, Certified Scrum Professional, and then Project Management Professional. So I come from development, and then I did QA engineering, and then project management, then went into Agile coaching and consulting. And then now I'm doing all of that except really the development part. I pretend that I do, but I don't. And I'm, what's your name? Sorry?
Doug.
Doug. As Doug mentioned, I'm product manager at Rentler. We do kind of the home rentals for, if you go on KSL, it goes to our site. So, and then I also I'm working with Mark on an app called Nom Nom Finder. We did it as a little project as part of Startup Weekend Provo back in kind of the end of March, I think it was. And we won fan favorite for the app, and it's to help people find food trucks. And it was a fun project, and we're actually going to launch it pretty soon. So we've submitted it to the App Store, and we're going to be on Android, since I know this is an open source. So yeah, so look for that soon. And I have a lot of fun with what I do, and I love it. So let's get to know each other. I wanted to just kind of see a show of hands. Who in here is an executive right now? So kind of executive level at wherever you work. Okay, cool. And then the talk is called How Agile Can Help You Be a Better Executive, but really it's how Agile can help organizations be better at what they do. So it doesn't matter if you're an executive, you want to be an executive, you're a manager. There's a lot that we can do in this space. So I just wanted to get kind of an understanding of what everybody in here, what your understanding is and experiences with Agile. So I'm going to go through the numbers here, and then you just show your hands wherever you fall on a scale of 1 to 5. I want to understand how familiar everybody is with Agile development. So 1 is not familiar with Agile at all. Shocker. 2, heard about it, not familiar with details of any specific methodology. Okay, cool. 3, moderately familiar, can name or describe at least one Agile methodology framework at a high level. Okay, so we're kind of at the 3, majority 3. 4, familiar, can explain details of at least one Agile methodology and can name others. Okay, and then 5, very familiar, can explain details of more than one Agile methodology and have experience implementing at least one. Okay, very cool. That helps me a lot. So the bad news is that there's a survey that's done every year by a group called Version 1, and they actually develop Agile tools for helping teams implement Agile in their organizations. And they do this survey every year to kind of understand where have we gotten with Agile. Is it actually providing the benefits that it says it will? Kind of what kind of changes are we seeing by implementing it, and what are the issues around it, concerns, et cetera, et cetera. So the bad news is that the survey has found that only 2% of executives are knowledgeable about Agile. And so with over 50% of organizations these days saying that they're implementing some form of Agile, and over 50% of projects these days saying that they are, that's really scary. Because if the executives aren't knowledgeable about Agile, then it's going to be a problem with implementation of it and having it be implemented successfully within organizations. And I have some war stories about that I'll share as we go through the presentation. So the good news is that together we can change that statistic and make the world a better place, heal the world, and all that good stuff. So whenever I present, my objective is not just to talk about something. I really am interested in people taking something away from the presentation and making a difference and making a change in wherever you're at. So if you're here, know that you're being recruited to go back and make a change in your organization. And hopefully I drive enough of a point that you can go back and talk to someone about what you've heard and say, I think that maybe we want to look into this or that or whatever it is. So this was actually, I was drawing this last night while I was preparing. So I thought it was going to be easier to take pictures and just post them on the slides. So I'm going to go through some assumptions. And we have 2 rules here. Number 1 is don't make assumptions, right? Whenever you're working or whatever. But number 2 is I get to make some because I don't know exactly what the audience is. And so I'm going to make some for this presentation. But in general, don't. So if you're here, where here equals how Agile can make you a better executive, which is this session, then I'm assuming that you have some ideas about Agile development and you have some ideas about what you think Agile can do for you, your organization. And so I want to talk about those. So let's start with kind of what everybody in here, what your ideas about Agile development are and what you think, and then we'll go into kind of what you think Agile can do for your organization. So, what does Agile mean to you? Right? She's pretty cool. So, whenever we bring up the word Agile or agility, there can be kind of varying understandings of what it means. Some people think it's a very specific process. Some people think it's cowboy coding, right? So I am interested in knowing what you guys think Agile is, and this is where I'd like people to kind of group together in groups of maybe like 4 people and start to talk, and then I'll give everybody about 5 minutes to brainstorm. What is Agile? What do you know about it? And share with your group, because that's the best way to kind of for us to discuss it, and then we'll pick one person from a few of the groups and share together. So 1, 2, 3. It's 4:07. We'll go for 5 minutes. So, go. Nobody on a lonely island. If you have paper or anything to take a couple notes, because I'm going to ask you what you guys came up with. Hey, you want to share with me what your ideas are?
I'll share with you.
Okay. So what does Agile mean to you?
Agile probably means, to me, rapid development cycles with rapid feedback.
Okay.
And,
What is your experience with it? Like, what are your impressions when you hear someone say something about Agile?
as you've pointed out, there are a lot of different approaches to it, and a lot of different opinions on the right way to do it, and a lot of opinions about how people implement it and what people like it.
Yeah.
My experience is very much specific to organizations and personalities within organizations.
To what results you get? Yeah.
Well, and what works for them.
Yeah. That's so key. And people think that if you don't do it a certain way, then you're not doing it right or whatever, and that's just not right. So, cool. Okay. Okay, let's start wrapping it up. All right. I was eavesdropping, and I heard some good stuff. So I'm just going to go through each group, and you share at least one thing that came up when you guys talked. So we'll start here in the back.
One of the best ways I've heard it described was say you wanted to deliver a car.
Mm-hmm.
You never try to build a car. You deliver a unicycle in a sprint, and then you deliver a bicycle, and then you deliver a motorcycle, and someday you'll get to a car. But each sprint should have a tangible, usable feature set.
Yeah, that actually encapsulates a couple of things, and it's really powerful because it's incremental, right? You're building from something and adding onto it, but also not only is it incremental, what you guys just said, but it's actually functional at every stage of it. So you're not starting just with a blob of nothing and then adding an appendage to it and then another one. You're actually coming up with something that works every cycle. So that's really good. And you guys?
More along those lines, you have a sprint, you're iterative, you have something to deliver after every single one, but it's also more modeled after how human behavior actually works. You don't plan out, and you're going to do this whole thing for the next 2 or 3 years of your family life. It goes in smaller chunks, and you plan out smaller chunks.
Yeah.
Take in change as it comes.
I heard you mention waterfall. What context were you?
Well, my organization, we use waterfall a lot, but my team I'm starting now, we're doing more pure agile, so it's new for us.
Yeah.
With waterfall, it was just spend 3 or 4, 2 or 3 months,
Gathering requirements,
plan it out, get your developers to estimate it, plan it based on that, and then never let a change come in. Because if you let a change come in, either extends the schedule or something else gets thrown out.
right? And, we all know that software, and technology doesn't change ever, and requirements don't change ever. Like, priorities never change. So that makes sense. No, they never change their minds. Right, so therefore you can see how being locked into a set of requirements and a deadline and not being open to change can be detrimental. So any key things that you guys would like to share?
I really like the flexibility of Agile. So ironically, there's kind of there's 2 camps, but I kind of side on the camp that allows for that flexibility to modify it depending on the context, the company, whether you're using executive level or a project management level. So I actually like I was using the term flexible framework with my group.
Yeah, great. How about you guys over here? You were grouped together.
We kind of had ADD, so we were talking about nom finder.
That's because you're executives. What's the problem? I gave you one task. That's all right.
We talked about continuous improvement,
Uh-huh.
so things like retrospectives.
Cool.
We talked about accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Allows keeps developers from going off into a corner and 6 months later popping out. We talked about waterfall methodology and how it's almost like a compressed waterfall that just happens in more rapid iteration.
Oh, don't say that in front of some of the pure Agilists. They'll get really mad. But whatever works, right? And you're touching on some of the cultural aspects of implementing Agile, which is great. Because if you want an organization that gets to that point of humming, right? Zzz, and everything's working and it's going along. You need to focus on the cultural aspects and achieving those, and not just the process and the methodology. And we do 1, 2, 3, and that's the steps. So, great. How about here in the middle somewhere? I'm not sure what the groups were here. Anyone?
We talked about benefit because every 2 weeks or however long your iteration is, you have an opportunity to reprioritize.
Mm-hmm.
So because executives aren't really going to have their mindset all the time, they always change their mind. Every 2 weeks, we can reevaluate. And also the value of a demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
a requirement comes in, developers go off and they build something and they come back after just 2 weeks and they demonstrate it. And it may or may not be what was asked for.
Mm-hmm.
You've only had 2 weeks to, where you maybe spend the bills or you're showing a good example. Maybe they brought something to the table that was better than what was expected.
Versus going off for 6 months and then finding out that it's not what they wanted, right? Or a year or whatever it is. So, very good point. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then what do you think a working demo is worth? So actually showing something that can function. All right, over here.
I guess at that point is, my career tells me that very few people can really deal effectively in the abstract, which is, to your last statement there, the model and having to see something working, and that's where you can sink your teeth into, and be it business users of all different areas, and as well, even within IT. They can't all get on the same abstract train. They don't.
Right. How many times have 3 different developers taken a requirement and seen it 3 different ways, right? That means this or this or this. So the power of being able to show something and that's what I thought you meant, or kind of talk through stuff in terms of, to me, it's really powerful to talk through requirements in terms of user stories. What's the functionality we're trying to get here? Not create me a table and put a pivot in whatever. Like, don't get into those details. Tell me how you want to use it as a user. Anything else to add here?
We kind of talked about how some of those things will end up tying together with how Agile is about embracing change.
Yep.
And taking into account that the last 50 years technology has been changing constantly. The last dawn of time, businesses have been changing constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of resisting that, use that as a strength. And then in turn, Agile tries to temper that, especially Scrum, with things like a simple feedback loop of, okay, we're going to take 2 weeks. We'll come back to you in 2 weeks. Let us focus. And that's the trade-off that we give is we're embracing change, but we get to focus. But at the same time, we have to provide feedback to the executives or the rest of the business so that they know things are coming. They have to be able to provide feedback to us. Yeah. And closing that loop is critical to the process.
Right. So even though you are responding to change, but doing it within a structure that's not chaos, that minimizes interrupts, and lets you be actually productive is a good thing.
I think part of Agile is that Agile itself does not bring in the flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
It provides a framework for us to define that flexibility.
Yeah.
Meaning if you get your little requirements and your little user stories
Mm-hmm.
that everybody can work with, defined in such a way that when the change comes in 2 days after you've got it defined, it still only delays things hours and not weeks and months like waterfall used to.
Right. Perfect. So I'm really, really excited because you guys get it. Like, you really, really get it. And that's a beautiful thing. So if, just in case people haven't seen this, the Agile Manifesto is kind of where, was it back in 2000? Where like a bunch of Agilists came together at Snowbird and they were like, we're going to write a manifesto. And they were really passionate about doing software better because they saw things being done a certain way and they saw how things could be improved. And this was kind of what they came up with. And I don't want to go too much into detail, but the idea is that there is still value in the items on the right. I want to stress that. Like, there is value in having a process and having tools and having documentation. Following a plan. There's value in those things, but really starting to focus more and change the culture to think about valuing a little bit more the things that are on the left. So individuals and interactions, value people, right? Value collaboration and talking and understanding, a common understanding, versus just a process. And if you're not following the process, then you're wrong. Value working software and demos over comprehensive. So instead of going 3 months trying to write requirements, you could have written something that you could have shown and demoed, and they would have said, maybe yes, that works for me, or no, that doesn't work for me. Value customer collaboration. So having somebody who's the voice of the customer within a lot of these Agile frameworks, like the product owner, over negotiation of contracts between people who are not even connected to the development team. And then responding to change over following a plan. Yeah, we still need to plan. We still roadmap, right? We still think about things a couple of sprints and even a release ahead of time. But we know that there's a common knowledge that those things might change. I go into those planning sessions saying, hey, we're looking at this in terms of this is where we'd like to be, but understand that I might not deliver all of these stories in this coming sprint just because we might find something out in the middle of it that derails all of us. You know, a competitor might come over and like swallow up all our business, and we need to change our path. So that's kind of just the core manifesto for Agile. And then there's the set of 12 principles, and I provided a link just because I don't want to go into too much detail. But the key principles and the takeaways from those principles I wanted to list and just have you guys think about them. So collaboration, continuous feedback and improvement. Continuous feedback is something that people can say that they have, but if you don't have a structure for providing that feedback, then you don't actually have continuous feedback. If you're not doing retrospectives, for example, and I just gave a talk about retrospectives this morning because people don't want to go into retrospectives. Why? Because with postmortems and lessons learned, we created a negative connotation to going in and talking about how things went. Because now people expect to go into those meetings and have it be a blame fest, or a whining session, or pointing fingers. And so we need to change that culture, and we need to make it so that there's as much focus on the positive and the acknowledgement as there is on identifying issues and how to fix them. So having a structure for feedback, and actually incorporating the action items from the feedback, making it so that there are concrete action items and incorporating them into your workflow, just as you would any other task or requirement. Self-organizing teams is one of the themes that comes up, and executives get the heebie-jeebies when they hear self-organizing teams because they're like, what? Nobody's going to tell them what to do? What, they're just going to go and like be cowboys and figure out what they want to work on and just work on it? But that's not the idea. The idea is to get to a level of maturity that people understand that there is a set of tasks in front of me. I can determine what can I take and be responsible and accountable for that task and get it done. And like I tell my 7-year-old, when you make a mess, you clean it up. It's your mess, right? So having it be not that you're just there doing a job, but you're actually accountable and it comes from within. Simplicity. So the art of doing less work, right? So executives will sometimes come in and ask me, how can we deliver faster? How can we do things faster? And I say, no. How can we do less so that we can do more? How can we minimize what our requirement is, or pare it down to the most simple version of it that will deliver you the business value so that we can do more things or be more effective in what we do versus trying to just go faster. Having retrospectives is a big thing for me, so just in case you haven't noticed. Frequent and continuous delivery, you guys have already talked about that, and that's important. And then the inspect, adapt cycle. So the whole idea of having those frequent and continuous delivery cycles is that you have an opportunity at each one of those small cycles to inspect what you did last time, what worked well, and adapt. How do we need to change to make it better next time? And then having a sustainable pace is so important, just because of all the research that we're finding out. We used to put on our resumes and in our job interviews, awesome multitasker. I can do like 600 things at one time and be doing 60 chat windows and writing code and talking on a conference call all at the same time. And I actually used to say that when I would go into interviews, like I can do a lot of things at the same time. What I didn't realize was all the stuff we're learning now about how you weren't really doing a good job at any of them. right? And don't try to overwork your people and have them work on 3 different projects at the same time just because you want to get full capacity. You know, executives and managers have to be the ones to really enforce the idea of having a sustainable pace and something that people can work with on the long term. And time boxing. So time boxing comes naturally within the structure of some of these Agile frameworks like Scrum. So you have a very set time for your sprint, and you have to stick with it and deliver within that time box. You have a set time for your daily stand-up meeting, 15 minutes, don't go over that. I will admit I'm a time boxing anonymous member, and I have problems sometimes with time boxing of my, especially my daily stand-up meetings, just because if you have distributed teams, sometimes the conversation gets sparked and it's really good ideas and the mojo is flowing and you don't want to cut that off. But you know, every time that I notice myself falling into those patterns, I go back into it and I figure out how I need to do better. But anyway, that's my continuous improvement moment of the day. So let's talk about Agile. So Agile development, the kind of formal definition, an iterative and incremental approach to developing software that incorporates continuous feedback loops, adaptability, and collaboration. I wanted to mention too, you know, I know most of us work in software organizations, but it's not only for software. So just swap out the words developing software and just think about it as achieving an end result, whether it's a product, a project, a goal, that incorporates those continuous feedback loops, adaptability, and collaboration. Because if executives can get into the mindset, and managers in the mindset of being Agile versus doing Agile, you know, thinking about things that way, and thinking about achieving even their own business and business goals in an incremental and iterative way, then they can start to bring in that environment and that mindset into their organizations. All right, so let's step back from Agile and all the Agile stuff and think about, you know, what are your goals, hopes, dreams for your organizations? I wanted to bring this up because, you know, this session was kind of to talk about how Agile can make you a better executive, but people who are here, I'm assuming you have certain sets of goals for your organization, or where you want to be, or where you see that there could be a problem that might be able to be fixed with Agile. So just kind of a couple of volunteers, you know, what are your goals for your organization? Where does somebody see that there's an area of improvement that you'd like to address?
We're working really hard to be able to reduce interrupts.
Okay.
That's one of our big challenges. There's always something going on. We tend to call it the executive grenade. You don't have to be hit by it, you just have to be close to it.
Yeah, that's a good one. You had someone here? No? Anyone else?
So one of mine with this new team is we came in the waterfall approach, and when things changed, everyone panicked. It was scheduled laid out this way, and so creativity was pretty low because if I changed how I'm going to do that, I couldn't enact the whole schedule. So I'd like to get to a point to where we're embracing a new idea that could actually make us go faster and do a better job and be more free, to be more creative, and not be afraid of just purely the schedule. Because this is what the plan says. To have more flexibility in that.
Cool. So, you know, creativity and innovation and being able to foster that, as well as allowing people to get their work done, efficiency and effectiveness. Anything else? Goals? Nobody has goals?
I'm not with a company now, but I've worked for several companies. I guess, you know, some of what I've seen lived through a lot of times is just, you know, trying to find a common language, if you will, in an organization, especially. And you know, that's where it can really facilitate. I guess some of what I've seen is that then sometimes the executives are trying to lead the parade.
Yeah.
When, you know, they're not as religious about the methodologies, etc. They just want to go faster.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So the next question that I want to ask is, with those goals or those objectives that you have for your organizations, what are the top 3 things that you think Agile will help you achieve? So if some of you indicated that you are familiar with Agile, I don't know, for example, I can see that you're just starting to adopt it, but I'd like to kind of go around again and see what are the top 3 things that you think that Agile can help you achieve, or that you hope that Agile can help you achieve within your organization. So new people.
I'm in an accelerator this summer, and I'm just hoping we can bring our product to market fast
Faster product to market.
and develop it so it has good testing.
Quality.
Quality product.
Okay. Yeah. Eliminating waste. You just spoke my language. I used to be asked to write a report 3 different ways for 3 different managers because they liked to see reports in different formats. One guy liked to see the charts first. The other guy wanted to see an executive summary. The third guy wanted to see the color coding at the top, and then didn't really read the rest, but wanted me to put in the rest because if I didn't, then it didn't look like a report. Waste.
Welcome to our world.
Yes. Waste.
Accountability and how quick changes introduced by an executive, like let's go faster, how helping the executive see what their schizophrenic view of things are, how that impacts the productivity and the quality and thus bottom line.
Yep. Okay.
And I think you touched on it, but I think there's a place for Agile to help level the playing field. Because I think often if you're talking about an executive-employee dynamic, it's very hard to, not everybody feels comfortable communicating in a very direct manner with an executive player. So I think there's a role where Agile can help bridge that gap that might exist within the communication layer.
Right. So bridging the gap with communication is a big deal. And, what you just talked about as well, there has to be, I won't lie, there has to be a strong person and a strong personality in between the teams and the executives. Whether that person is the Scrum Master, the product owner, somebody needs to be hired to fill in that role, and the executive needs to understand that there will and needs to be a person that is strong enough to come up and actually uncover the dysfunctions that are happening. So one big thing that executives can do to improve effectiveness in their organization and make these Agile adoptions actually successful is to understand and be told in no unclear words or whatever, however you would say that there is going to be this role. It's going to be a strong role. Somebody's going to be coming and telling you what needs to happen. And for example, with the interrupts and just coming with their schizophrenic, like, oh, I want this today and that tomorrow, there has to be someone who will draw the line and say, your request yesterday was this, and we got the team on this. If it's a priority, a high priority enough, realize that you are now going to throw off X amount of productivity or days or work. Always come back to that executive with the impact of what they're asking for versus, okay, we'll do it. Just saying yes without explaining. And it doesn't have to be in a confrontational way. Just say, okay, I realize this is a priority for you. Realize, you as well, that this means that we're going to be set back this many days, or I'm going to need to hire this many new people to accommodate this new thing, and just make sure that they're aware of the impact of their requests. Because the way that we've always been operating, you just nod your head and do what they say and not really make them understand. They need that understanding. So, all right, so the top 3 reasons that respondents in the survey, the Agile State of Agile survey, cited for adopting Agile are accelerating time to market, more easily manage changing priorities, so the changing of priorities, having a way and a structure to manage those, and better align business and IT objectives in that shared language as well. So make sure that everybody's on the same page, we all understand where we're going. And so they went into organizations that actually implemented Agile methodologies, and they did kind of a survey to see what actually happened after they adopted those Agile methodologies. What was the impact? And you can see here the list of things that they were hoping would happen, and then whether it got better, no benefit, or if it got worse. And you can see for the most part, for example, ability to manage changing priorities, 92% said that it got better. Increased productivity, 87% said that that got better. Reduced risk, 82% said that. So you can see just from this graph that pretty much for the most part, all of the benefits that people were hoping to get from adopting an Agile methodology, when they were done successfully, they were able to reap those benefits. And this one is just really kind of plotting the same information, but on a different graph that shows when they went into the Agile adoption, what things were most important to them. Those are all over on the right-hand side. And what things were maybe less important. And the things that were above the line improved. The things that were below the line either didn't improve or had less improvement. So you can see project visibility, managing changing priorities, improving alignment. Those were all both important and improved. Reduced risk was important. It didn't improve as much, which kind of makes sense because risk is a hard thing to manage, right, and a hard thing to reduce. Improved team morale wasn't really seen as a very important one, but it actually improved as well. So this is just, I like viewing this plotted view of the graph.
In your previous chart, was where it was showing less change, the 29%, is that an indicator that Agile was not implemented correctly, or that, is that, should we read that as Agile doesn't work for everyone, or was it a case that it was maybe not implemented correctly?
That's a great question. So Sarah asked if for the organizations where they didn't see as much benefit, or there wasn't an improvement in an area, was it because the implementation wasn't correct, or was it because Agile just didn't work for them? And I will take a guess that it's probably both. Probably organizations didn't really implement it well, so they didn't see the benefit. Probably there are organizations out there that this is not going to work for. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in some upcoming slides. Okay, so what are the barriers? So when we looked at why an Agile adoption didn't work, what are some of the barriers and the main barriers to a successful Agile adoption? The biggest one was inability to change organizational culture. So here's one of my war stories. So I went to a client in Hawaii, nonetheless. Can't complain too much. And they were doing an Agile adoption and an Agile transformation. And they had probably like 4 consultants come in and help them do this Agile transformation. 4 highly paid, 2 highly paid consultants come in and do their coaching and their training and try and get them onto an Agile methodology. And it just was not working. It was not working. And so my boss called me and was like, hey, we have this opportunity to go in and help them figure out what's going wrong and kind of help them get on the right track. So, of course, I was scared because I don't like to fail at things. And it seemed like everybody who was put into this job was set up for failure because it wasn't working. Something was wrong and it wasn't taking. But I do put myself in uncomfortable situations a lot to achieve what Sarah talked about earlier, which is growth. And so I said, okay, fine, let's give it a shot and let's see. It would be a really cool experiment. So I put together kind of my materials and stuff and prepared and had all the prep meetings with them over the phone before going there on site. And then I went on site. I could kind of tell that there was dysfunction just over the phone, but then when I got there, it took me sitting in a room with the managers 2 days in a row, and at the end of the second day telling the managers, who cares about your Gantt chart or your Microsoft project plan? That's not going to cut it. Before they were like, what? Nobody had told them that they were focusing on the wrong things. All they wanted to do for every consultant that had come before, they had hired this Microsoft consultant months back to create a fully fledged, documented, really detailed 100-something document of their requirements in detail and how the requirements were going to be implemented. And they wanted to know, okay, now we're going to do Agile. because it's supposed to be better. So now I want you to map every single user story to a requirement in that requirements document. This was the way that the executives and the managers thought that they were going to control this process, by having it map. And every single consultant could not do that mapping because they said, we're not doing it exactly how it was written 3 months ago by this Microsoft consultant. And so they had a very, very hard organizational culture to work with, and the executives and the managers were just not hearing it. And nobody told them that mapping this to that was not going to get you where you want to go. You know, you need to kind of think about things in a different way and be a little bit more dynamic in your planning. And so I had heard it so consistently over the first couple of days, and I said, it's that you're not going to succeed if this is what you're trying to do. And they went overnight, and it was like somebody had slapped them in the face because nobody had. And that's the joy of being a consultant sometimes, is you get to say stuff that, you know, employees can't say. So so the next day they came over, and they were now coming to me asking me, okay, so what do we need to do? Like, if we're not mapping, what do we need to do? So we spent the rest of the week going through our planning sessions and talking through how we need to implement it with the team. And at the end, the executives that were the most skeptic were saying, we've achieved more in this week than we have in the past few months. So it takes a level of honesty and really organizational change to really adopt Agile successfully. Because if you keep trying to do things in the old framework, and if the executives are not trained and coached and made to understand that your expectations cannot be the same as what they used to be, then it's not going to be successful. So the other couple of factors that were pretty important were just a general resistance to change, and you'll find that wherever you go. I worked at Hewlett-Packard for 4 years, and I was there during the time when they decided to do their transformation to Agile. And you know, there were people who were just kicking and screaming, and they didn't want to do it. And the way that was solved was by having the managers and the execs were so committed to doing it, they were all in. They were like, there's no negotiation, this is what we're doing. And sometimes it takes that. It takes being so committed to it that, you know, that resistance is, at the end of the day, just going to smooth over. And then the third one is trying to fit Agile elements into a non-Agile framework. And that kind of ties back into my story. They were trying to make everything fit from a Gantt chart into now sprints. Okay, so why is culture important? So on the left-hand side, this illustrates doing Agile. So taking a framework, it's very structured. This is Scrum. This is how we're going to do Scrum, but not changing anything else, right? So that's what you're going to get. People in cubes doing Scrum. Is it going to be effective? Is it going to make you a better, more innovative, more creative, more effective, doing the right things versus just doing the things that you're being told are supposed to be done environment? It hasn't really done that. On the right-hand side over there, you see what the utopia of being Agile is. So adopting a mindset of Agile is really, it's the difference between these two. It really is. So I've been in organizations that have been both. And I encourage everybody to go and check out this video. And I'll talk about it a little bit later. But I'll get back to the doing Agile versus being Agile. But so step one, we talked about what do you hope that an Agile adoption or transformation can do for your organizations. Before you even go into saying, well, this is what we need to do to achieve those goals, is to do Agile, we need to identify what the problem is. So before committing to an Agile transformation or even starting to adopt Agile practices into your organization, identify why. You know, what problem are you trying to solve? Are you trying to solve the problem that people aren't talking to each other? You know, there are tools within Agile that can help you with that. Are you trying to solve the problem that you keep changing your mind as an executive? Agile's not going to help you with that unless you stop changing your mind. So that's where, like, I wanted to illustrate that Agile is not the silver bullet to all problems. You need to first identify what your problem is and make sure that you're addressing that problem the right way before trying to say, oh, we're not going fast enough. Slap Agile on top of it, then we'll fix everything. So step two is Agile the answer. So if your culture is not compatible with the being agile thing that was on the right, you need to start with processes, and you need to start small. So take some of those practices from doing agile. Take the daily stand-up. Start with that. Take retrospectives. Start with that. Don't put it into a very rigid structure. Start injecting some of those things that make you be agile. And then implement incremental changes. So like we were just saying, versus trying to, sometimes the all-in approach is a good one, but if your organization and your culture have such a far way to go before you can be there, then start taking it one step at a time. Be agile about it. Cool. Some great resources for that. There are a couple of books that if you are an executive or you have access to somebody who's considering this or in this position, Agile Adoption Patterns, A Roadmap to Organizational Success is a really good one. And the second one is so great. It's Becoming Agile in an Imperfect World. And, organizational culture is such a complex thing. And how can you take steps to become agile and not fall flat on your face? Because the minute that an agile transformation doesn't work, then execs throw it out the window and they say everything about it is bad, right? And then there are some companies that I've been in that you can't even say the word agile anymore because you'll just get reamed. So these two books are really good resources for how to take steps. Identify what level of change you are ready for. So go into your organization if you're an executive or a manager, or again, you have their ear, right? So think about, are we at the phase where we really can only focus on tactical changes, i.e. how we work? Or are we at a level where we're kind of okay with the tactical, now we need to focus a little bit more on strategic. So what do we want to achieve as an organization? Or are we really advanced, we're good with those two things, and now we want to focus on our cultural issues. So who do we want to be as a company? And I think we can make these available, right? The slides. So in each one, there's a different focus. On the tactical, there's a focus on processes, work practices, like we were saying, start to inject and adopt some of the practices that come with Agile. And then you'll hopefully achieve the results that are listed at the bottom. And so I'm not going to go through these in detail just because I want to make sure to get through the end, but hopefully we can make these available. But really identify where is your area of focus, and then start to look at the areas of what things you can focus on and start to achieve those results. So in conclusion, the session is called How Agile Can Make You a Better Executive. Actually, it can't. The tools that are within Agile can really help you build a successful and effective organization. But if you don't have the core beliefs and the cultural and the ability or the willingness to adopt the cultural change, those things are not going to make you a better executive just by bringing in Scrum or Kanban or whatever methodology you're bringing in and saying, all right, teams, go do it, delegating it to the teams to do, and you're not making changes to your understanding of the culture or or your expectations of the teams, or of changing requirements or of changing timelines or any of those things. Those adopting an Agile methodology cannot make you a better executive. What it can do is, again, give you the tools to work and live better, build a better environment. Combined with real cultural change in your organization, it can help you achieve more delighted customers, and who doesn't want that? More innovation and creativity, a culture of self-organization and accountability, and faster time to market. And some of the other things, but those were the top ones that people cited. So get involved. As executives or managers that are looking at this, they need to know that they need to get involved. It is not enough to come and say, I'm going to hire a coach, and they're going to coach my teams, and they're going to learn Scrum, and then everything will be good. The executives themselves need to be coached as well. They need to get trained on the methodologies and understand them, not just know their name. They need to understand them. So learn it, understand it, and do it. And then once you're doing it, do it well. Learn from others' failures and successes. So executives need to understand where have Agile methodologies worked for companies and where have they not. There's a great video out there if you look up Spotify engineering culture, and it talks about how Spotify organizes their teams, and they call them, I think there's like tribes, and so they have a really, really interesting culture, and their CEO he's super agile, like he's just a big agilist, and he understands it very well. He knows the pitfalls, he knows what can work well, and they've really just structured their company in this way that it's become very collaborative, they're working very effectively, and it's just a great thing and a great resource for people to, no company needs to implement things the exact same way, but it's always great to get ideas from each other and learn from people's successes as well as failures. And then cultivate a tolerance for failing fast. That's one thing that, typically if there's a failure, we're always scared about bringing that up because then somebody's going to get in trouble, and then that's the end of that, and they're going to lose their job, and the world comes to an end. By bringing in Agile methodologies, we also need to focus on the idea that this is allowing us within those 2-week cycles or whatever to maybe we might fail, right? It might not deliver exactly what you're looking for, but it's only 2 weeks, right? Or it's only however much time. And the one thing that I will caveat that, like people always say if you go to these Agile conferences or whatever, fail fast, fail fast, fail fast. But we forget to mention, although it's implied, right? Make sure that you also learn from it. So don't just keep failing fast. Have that continuous feedback loop. Learn why you failed. Learn what was wrong. Did we have an issue in communication of the user story? Could we have benefited from having pictures drawn, sketches? Could we have benefited from having a 24-hour online server that does whatever, automated builds, identify what it is that's causing you to fail or that's causing issues to happen and fix them. Ask for and get help. So there's a lot that's involved in succeeding at Agile transformations or Agile adoptions, and people and executives should not expect that they can just go read a book and learn it. There's so much that comes from experience, and people need to be comfortable with asking for help and how can I better this. And there's such a great community out there, and if you have resources or connections to people who have done it, they can always lead you in the right direction. So just wanted to add that. And as an addendum, I wanted to add a couple of ideas that popped into my head after I woke up today. Don't call people resources. Just don't. Just don't. Unless you are okay with being called overhead, then don't call people resources. And I provided some suggestions. You can call them team members, developers, tech wizards, awesomeness, ministers of awesome, or just people. Participate in retrospectives and make sure they happen. So if a manager or an executive says, okay, we're doing Agile, we're doing this thing, I really stress for them that they should be making sure that retrospectives are happening, and then go participate. Listen to what the problems are. Even if you're not providing input, listen to what the teams are saying. Now, that's with a caveat. Somebody that's willing to go in and participate in a retrospective should also not be allowed to fire someone because of something that was said in a retrospective. The teams need to feel that it's a safe environment. And if it means excluding certain people that are not at that cultural level where they can be in there for being constructive, then that's what they need to do. So just wanted to add that. All right. Any questions or answers? Yeah. Are we done?
Time's up, but if
okay.
you want to stay after,
okay.
they are welcome to, because you're the last session.
Okay, I'm the last session. So there's my contact info if you don't want to stay after. If you do, I'm here.